This is Illuminate, the podcast about men with good hearts, open minds, and a desire to make the world better. Welcome to Illuminate. I'm your host, Chris Tidrick, and I'm here with Tim Fullerton. Tim is a digital strategist, entrepreneur, and media creator who works at the intersection of politics, business, and culture. He was the co-founder of White Dudes for Harris and then created its successor organization, Find Out Media, and the Find Out podcast, which has already received nearly 1 million downloads. Previously, Tim led digital and communications efforts for the Obama administration, Everytown for Gun Safety, the state of New York, and WeWork. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
Yeah, I was just realizing that you were one of the original people that signed up for to be a guest on Illuminate back in December when I put a call out, and I had about 90 people sign up to be guests. And I somehow I hadn't gotten down to your name. I think you were down in like the 50s and 60s, and I did about 20 episodes in season 1, and then I met you via Threads. And then I saw you had launched this new Find Out podcast, and I loved the podcast. And I'm like, oh, I need to get Tim on the show. And so I'd reached out to you and to get you on the show. And as I was prepping for this and in prepping for season 2, I was going back through the list and said, oh my, Tim was actually one of the people who volunteered to be on the show right away. So my apologies for not having on the show in season 1, but really glad we're going to have the conversation today.
Yeah, no, same. And I'm glad actually I have a much better story to tell now than I would have in December. So it all worked out well.
Yeah, fantastic. So what we do here is I like to dive right in and get kind of at the core of who somebody is. You know, this is a show where, your Find Out podcast, you all talk about politics all the time. And so I have a pretty good idea where your political opinions lie, but I don't have a good sense of who you are as a human being and as a man. And so I want to dive into that. So my first question is what's your why? Where do you find purpose and what drives you?
Yeah, I mean, It's an issue because I was looking at the pre-read and I was thinking about this question a lot, and I've always really been mission driven, and where I really get my kicks from a work perspective is trying to leave things a little better than I left them, and I think that I have chosen careers or jobs over the time. It's sort of a crazy. If you look at the resume, it's kind of insane, but they've always been mission driven and there's always been a purpose. And I love to go in and fix things and make things better for people, which is why I've done a lot of political and nonprofit work. But even the WeWork stuff, the original idea of making work more enjoyable for people who spend 8 hours a day there. This is pre-COVID, is a noble thing. I mean, we have movies like Office Space that talk about the awfulness of office and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I've always been purpose driven, and I don't know where I got this, but in my mind, I've always said, on my deathbed, whenever that is, I don't want to look back and have any regrets, and I have tried to live that way the best that I can.
So let's talk about your journey as you've gone through. We're all made of our experiences. The people we become has so much to do with what we experience in life. So what were those significant moments in your life that made you the person that you are today, this purpose-driven person?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, my parents obviously had a lot to do with it, and my mom was a teacher, and my dad worked for a defense contractor, and they kind of always stayed in the town that they grew up in, and they'd always told me to go out and find my place. And if that's in Maine, that's great, where I grew up, or if it's somewhere else, that's okay too. And so I went to DC I think we took a family trip when I was 12, and I fell in love with the place. I saw all the monuments and the action, and I was already starting to get a bit politically aware even at 12. I can remember these current events tests that they would give us in 5th grade, and everybody would be like, how the hell do you know these things as a 5th grader? And I remember one was who's the Israeli prime minister? And at the time it was Yitzhak Shakur, who was a long time ago, and people would look at me like, what on earth? How did you know that? And it was just because I was interested in it. I used to read the encyclopedia. We had an Encyclopedia Britannica. I used to read it, not for school. I would just look through it because I was interested. So I think that I've always just had that, political instinct of really being interested in it, and also learning from it, and how I can make the world a better place. And then I think in a work perspective, what totally changed my life was when I was asked in 2008 to join the Obama digital team for his first presidential campaign. And that was like the pinnacle of digital at the time. And that sort of changed the course of my career forever for having that experience.
Yeah. So what was that like being part of that campaign? And
so I'm going to go back in time a little bit, but if anybody remembers the show Beverly Hills 90210, the pilot, I think that Brandon and Brenda, or whatever their names were coming from Minnesota to going to Beverly Hills. The school was literally at 90210. That's what I felt like as a guy from Maine walking into the Chicago headquarters for the first time. And I honestly had imposter syndrome. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, these people are all like, the best of the best. And I was having a really hard time. I'm not even sure I've even talked to anybody about this before, but I just at first I was just like in awe. And I was like, what am I doing here? These people, I can't add any value. And then I literally, after a day or two, you go, no. Like, they actually do need my help, and I have something to add here. So that it was a wild experience, and it is the toughest job that I never want to have again, because it was 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was 29, 30 at the time. So the thought of doing that now is just like, there's a reason they say politics is a young person's game, but that was what it was like. And it was just, I got to be there on election night, which was obviously just like a complete thrill and a blast. And, I hope to have that feeling again someday.
I can't imagine how moving that was in person. Like I remember sitting on TV, I had like tears streaming down my face. Yeah. It was like an amazing, amazing point. So what kind of qualified you to be on Obama's digital team? Like, what had you done before that?
So I was, looking back on it now, I really one of the first people doing digital social media back in the mid 2000s. My first 4 years out of school, I worked for a trade association in DC, and then I decided to move to Boston because I was, I had been at that point 8 years that I had been away from Maine, and I wasn't ready to go to Maine, but like I had friends in Boston, and actually my grandmother was sick with cancer, and at the time it didn't look very good. So like I wanted to move. And so I took this job running part of the email list for Oxfam America. And this was in 2005, right after the massive tsunami that, killed 200,000 people and caused mass destruction. And then the flip side of that was that a lot of these aid organizations became just flush with cash because people were just like, it was just hundreds of millions, I think maybe even billions of dollars were being raised. And so Oxfam asked me to come in and try to build their advocacy, their email advocacy, not all the fundraising, just the advocacy stuff. So pushing Congress for fairer trade laws and asking corporations to do like the bare minimum for their workers and things like that. And that's when MySpace came up. And so I started playing around with it, and I was like, why can't we have this? And so I think it's actually, no one's proved me wrong, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I think I created the first social media account for a global brand. And that was the Oxfam page on MySpace. So I was sort of one of the early adopters of all this stuff. And then I did have a connection in the Obama administration who recommended me. So like there was a bit of luck that happened there as well.
Yeah. So the importance of network, right? So like, I kind of have to bow to you. You're like one of the social media OGs. For those of you listening that weren't alive, that MySpace was like the place to be many, many years ago. It was the original Facebook. So I think most of my listeners are probably Gen Xers and millennials. They get it. But just in case there's a few Zers out there that are and it was interesting. Yeah. We actually ended up doing a partnership with MySpace out of that, a thing called Rock for Darfur, which was they would reach out to artists that were on tour, and one night we designated as the Rock for Darfur night, and they allowed Oxfam to come table, and also a portion of the proceeds from the show. So it was actually one of the first online to offline actions as well, because we had street teams and did that stuff and tabling, but like this was the first time where we used our digital tools to drive people to offline action, to like work at tables or sign petitions. And we collected people's email addresses at those events. So it ended up being really, really successful. Some people got to go to LA for this big ritzy event, which somehow I did not get to go, even though I was the one that did all the work. But anyways, not that I'm better 20 years later, but it was a really fun experience for sure. And we actually learned that we would trade the top 8
with bands. We'd say, we'll put you in our top 8 if you put us in your top 8. So it was a way to get visibility and branding. So we were doing that in 2005, 2006, which was really fun.
Yeah. Social media bartering. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you on the Find Out podcast, you guys have had several episodes where if it wasn't completely focused on masculinity, it's touched on masculinity for sure. This is like one of the topics that I think is being talked about a lot right now, and some in healthy ways and some in not healthy ways. It's one of the reasons why I started this podcast was I kind of felt like men needed a new lighthouse. I didn't think they were getting it online. I think you guys have talked about that a lot, and I've appreciated those conversations. So I wanted to ask you, like, what does being a healthy man in today's world look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a lot about this because obviously, like, I got pulled into this with White Dudes for Harris last year, in which this was a big component. And then obviously seeing, the results of the election, which were the opposite of what we wanted, and the fact that we'd actually gone backwards, it really made me really think about what that means. And I think that it's been co-opted into this, like, pump your chest and, like, be the big strong man at the top of the mountain. And, if you're strong and you work out, you'll get the girl, and, like, she'll do your cooking and cleaning, this, like, weird sort of very 1950s style definition of masculinity. What I think masculinity is having a lot of empathy and having kindness and lifting up people around you who need help, and also protecting and providing for your family. And that can be jointly, or that could be any ways that you want. But I do not subscribe to this online bro culture that is basically like punching down in order to lift themselves up. And I understand why people fall into that trap, and there are a lot of bad actors out there to capitalize on that. There's lots of names that could be thrown out, but and I think that we have to show a different way, and that's partially part of the Find Out podcast is literally just showing men a different way, that you can be masculine, you can be comfortable with who you are, and you can still support, people of color, the LGBTQ plus community. And we don't need to other people and put people down in order to lift ourselves up. We can do it all together. And so we have made a very conscious decision on our show to make sure that we are, representing people of color, the LGBTQ plus community, others, because this is not about centering men in the conversation. This is about men being better and understanding that they can recognize and support people around them that are different from them. And I think we've lost a little bit of that over the past 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a little bit of a thought experiment last week on Threads, and it kind of took off. I had asked the women on Threads in 5 categories, describe like your ideal man. Mm-hmm. And I took all the results of that. I think I got like 80 women who responded to it. Really thoughtful answers. I took that, I threw it into ChatGPT and said, hey, give me a summary of this, of all of these responses. Mm-hmm. And the answer was the exact opposite of bro culture. Like the exact opposite. Like that's what, if a guy is out there thinking that he's puffing up his chest in like this bro culture version of masculinity, that is not what women are looking for. If that's his end goal, like he's barking up the wrong tree.
Right. And I mean, the problem with this is that there are a lot of folks out there who are speaking to young men, and I'm talking 18 to 25, who are telling them that this is the way. And that the problem is that what happens is they finally find out that that's not the way, but they've already been essentially red pilled or told that this is the way to behave. And then then instead of getting angry at the people who have been lying to them, they get mad at women for not accepting them. Yeah. And it's like, guys, like women don't want the things that these guys are telling you is toxic. And frankly, most of the world has moved on from this, at least the Western developed world. And that's not what women want. And I'm so glad you did that. And I'm so glad that you got so many responses because that's what I hear all the time. I hear like there's some people have literally been like, we've actually joked about making a dating app for progressives that only progressive or liberal left leaning or whatever, or even independent, but like a set of values. And all of these women were like, please make that, please make that, please make that, because I can't stand the harassment and the anger when a man gets rejected is also like they're treating it like as a humiliation rather than just some people don't mix. And that's the sort of stuff we're trying to show, because it's just young men are getting the wrong sense, like they're being taken advantage of for money and for fame by these people who are doing it. And then they've somehow managed to twist it so much that these guys just keep coming back for more, rather than being like, wait, you like pulled the wool over my eyes. This is not actually how society works.
Yeah, and I don't think society, and I have a son. I have one son, and I think I did a pretty decent job with him. But I don't even know if I was intentional about like preparing him to be a healthy man in a really diverse society, right? Where men like they're the default dominance that society had given men doesn't exist anymore, right? But we're not preparing boys to exist in that world. Like we're preparing them to exist in the old world, and it's unfair to them. And I think we need to do a better job as fathers to do that. And luckily my son he's 23 now. He's turned out okay.
Good.
Yeah, I actually, I had this really like special moment the other day. I went to the No Kings rally in our town, and I was walking through the crowd and I looked up and there was my son and his girlfriend. I didn't even know they were coming, and he showed up. So that was like, that was a cool moment. But it's really hard to to fight what is out there online for them.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to somebody that I worked with years ago and is very progressive, and her husband is progressive. And, she told me the story about her son did vote for Kamala Harris, but he listens to this, one is Andrew Tate, who is, by all accounts, a horrible human being who mostly lies about these things and is a victimizer of women. But like he has this massive online following because he's basically filling them with a story that doesn't exist. Yeah. It sounds great, and it sounds a lot better, like quote unquote better than reality for that, mostly in this case, white young men, that they're the saviors and all this stuff. And then reality hits them and it's just like, no, this is not it. So even people who are well-intentioned and have the right beliefs and everything are struggling with this because of the echo chamber that has been created to basically poison young men into believing something that doesn't exist, and then blaming people who are not like them for that not happening, rather than being introspective and looking at themselves and being like, well, how can I be better?
Yeah, so those guys are likely going to have a decent bit to unpack as they grow up. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of deconstruction. And all of us, as we grow and as we learn more about ourselves and more about the world, we have to sort of toss away previous foundational things in our lives, things that we really held dearly. And then all of a sudden realize it's either not right or it doesn't serve us anymore. So anything that you've had in your life that you've had to like go through that deconstruction to get to the other side? Yeah. I mean, I think that, one, just how guys talk to each other, right? In very especially, I mean, I was a kid of the 90s and Gen X millennial edge, but I guess I'm Zennial, whatever the hell that means. Okay, yeah. Born in 78. But, we used to use these horrible terms, that today you would you'd be run out of the room. I mean, using I'm not even going to say the words, but the R word, which is a definition for people with disabilities. Horrible. We used to say that stuff all the time. Or the F word related to the LGBTQ plus community, because we didn't know, and we were the worst thing that you could be growing up. I was in a small town, was gay. So being somebody calling you those terms. Yeah. And, I had to realize, especially when I went to college and I went to kids from, cities and had more experiences with a lot of different types of people, that this is not the way to do it. And this is not the way to talk. And luckily for me, I got out of it pretty quickly. But we've talked about on our show, and we've got two former Republicans that have deconstructed, one of which was literally, he says this publicly. So he joined the army to go, get revenge on 9/11 and those things. And it took going to war and seeing the horrific things that were happening on both sides. I mean, this was a war that we were lied into and destroyed
millions of people in the Middle East lives and hundreds of thousands of Americans. We lost tens of thousands, but like the trauma since has been incalculable. And it took all of that for him to get out of it. And now he's as liberal and progressive as they come. But like, these paths are very, very common, and it's a lot easier to slip down a dangerous path than to pick a path that actually will be much more fulfilling and rewarding in your life. But there's just not been a lot of examples of people leading that way.
Yeah, you're talking about like all the language we used as kids. It was the same for me. Yeah. And I had this moment when my son was young and he had just started playing baseball. He's playing Little League. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get the Bad News Bears, and we're gonna watch the Bad News Bears. Because that was like this movie that I remembered from my childhood, and it was about Little League, and I'm like halfway through the movie, and I'm like, every racial bigoted slur in the book is in this movie, and it went straight over his head because he'd never heard any of them. Yeah, like he had never, like no one had ever uttered them. But for me as a kid, like I heard those all the time. Oh yeah. And so, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that as a deconstruction of like reworking the way you speak and you refer to people.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real thing. I mean, I even like one of my favorite Christmas movies is It's a Wonderful Life, which 99% of it is completely fine. But they have a woman of color as their maid, and like they make her put on a extra accent and like and then they're chasing her around, like they're doing all these. And growing up, I was just like, I don't know, it's just a movie. And then like looking at it in my 20s and 30s, I was like, oh my God, this is awful. And it was, that was a movie in the 40s, and like we have to, it's good that we learn and grow and get out of it, but not everybody does either. And so that's the trick, is like, how do you get people to the point where they do look at those things and go, no, that was wrong, and I'm glad we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the topics that I talk about a lot on this podcast is this idea of men in community. And I personally think, in some of the research shows, that lack of community is one of the reasons that a lot of men don't go down these rabbit holes that aren't healthy for them or society at all. Mm-hmm. So I like asking the question, like, where do you find community, especially among men? And aside from the other four guys that you spend a lot of time with now doing the podcast, right? Where are you finding community?
Well, it's really interesting. I think about this all the time, and this is something that we talk a lot about internally at Find Out, because it's a problem. It is a problem, and it's one thing in your 20s, when you're going to bars, you're single, you're going to bars, or you're playing softball or whatever, and you used to have other young people in the place that you work. Well, the work thing is pretty much disappeared for young people because most people are remote or part-time, and like. It's not, things change as you get older, you get married, you don't want to go to bars every night, and you don't want to, you have commitments, you have children and all these things. And so I honestly, I moved to New York 10 years ago from DC. I had a lot of friends in DC. But I don't have a lot of strong friends in the New York area. I have friends and I see them sometimes, but none of them are like my really, really good friends that I've known for a long time. And that is something that we've been grappling with, because it is a real problem, and isolation for men is a real problem. And that is how men tend to get radicalized older in life, is when they are, at least in their minds, been rejected by society or are alone. And then they get into these chat rooms and these podcasts and everything. And then that those people are telling them it's other people that are causing you this, and it's not you. And we have to find ways to get to those people before that happens. And we are actively thinking about what offline, this is a digital speak offline, in real life events we could do on a regular basis that could start to do that. I mean, some of it, I know a guy in Brooklyn who started a book club, and he's got 20 guys in a book club. And I think a lot of it's just for the community. I don't even know if it's necessarily about the books. We need to do more of that. It can't just be sports and drinking. Drinking has its whole set of problems. My father was an alcoholic, so I always, I drink, but that's always in my mind, and that's not a thing that I do, every day. Yeah. and trying to find 3 or 4 hours for a softball game or something like that is tough. So we need third places, or third spaces, I think it's called, where people can do that. And, they talk a lot about the elderly loneliness epidemic, but I think there is a much more pressing, I mean, that's a problem too, but like pressing issue with men, especially men who are married and have children and don't have those friends. It's a real problem, and we have to figure that out. And, like I said, we're working on it, and we are open to all ideas and suggestions, but like, it's an issue. So like, I don't like, I do go to a local bar on Fridays from 2 to 5 is like my like sort of like me time that's not work and not child related. So like, I know some people in there, but like, that's been it. I mean, I joined a podcast group here in New York. That just started. So like, there are things, but it is quite difficult. And I can imagine living in a rural area, really, really hard to find those things.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to get those, because I have not historically had a lot of really close male friends. It's in the last decade of my life is really the first time I've like really started to get deep male friendships. And I returned to church 5 years ago after being gone for 30 years. I think I've heard you say you grew up Catholic. I grew up Catholic. Yeah. I won't, the last episode of this podcast, I went into like the reason I left, but I came back, and like our church, it's a super progressive church, like almost to the point where I don't even recognize it as a church, which is weird, right? You should, but they have these things called church-wide journeys. They're essentially discussion groups, right? They're a small group. And this past one, I signed up for the group that was all men. It was the first one I had done that was all men. And it was such an amazing experience because they opened up. Yeah. I'd been in ones that like married couples had come to, and like the guys just don't talk the same way when women are in the room. And it was really, great to see them open up, be vulnerable, sort of admit the places where they're struggling with things. And like, we need more of that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Yeah. It's a really good point, because I am not religious anymore. And, I mean, probably for similar reasons you left the Catholic Church. I just didn't really feel like it spoke to me, and I don't like how they treat women. And obviously the abuse scandals is horrific, and they kind of just, shoved it under the table. But it's interesting, because I made a comment about religion on social once, and a buddy of mine who has become a pastor, he's a liberal pastor, he was a fraternity brother, and a really, really great guy. And he didn't argue with me on the merits of whether religion is the right thing or not. But what it hit home to me was like, but we're one of the only places that builds community. Yeah. And he's right. Right. So like it didn't change my perspective on my feelings towards religion, but it's like a respect, mutual understanding. Like I get it, and I understand, and like taking that away would be devastating for lots of people. And so like I have changed my position a little bit based on that, because I understand the need, and it really does help a lot of people. And I don't want to take that away from people.
My son was in Scouts for 10 years, and that became a community for me, because there was a lot of other dads that were there. And then he stopped doing that, and that community just vaporized for me. And like, so the church community is a kind of revitalization of that.
I love that. I mean, I think it's like, the thing is, there's not one solution to this problem, right? It's churches, it's, book clubs, it is sports, it is going to watch a game at a bar or something. And it's like, or like movies and music. I mean, the one that I tell a lot of people about, and we've been talking about, this sounds silly, but like, so I went to see Oasis in New York, and I had loved them when I was a kid of the 90s, and I had the albums when they came out and all this, and I never thought I'd get to see them. And then we went, and I took my wife. It's at Giant Stadium. So there's like 90,000 people at this thing. 80% men, like 75, 80% men.
Interesting.
And I'm looking around, and I had seen some clips, so I knew some of this, but like there were like men crying, tears of joy. Yeah. Men with their sons. Like there's all these videos on TikTok of like, probably people slightly older than us with kids, probably in their teens or early 20s, videoing their dads seeing like when they first come out on stage. And it's like pure unadulterated joy. There's no political, because those bozos don't like get into politics. Like they're kind of knuckleheads, and which is why they weren't around for a long time. But like watching grown men, like the crowd swaying, and like, cause we had seats on the edges, so I could see like not the pit, but the floor. And it's like doing this, and it's all guys like our age. And I'm like, this is a unique situation, and I understand that, but like, we need more of this. And it could take the form in a lot of ways, but like, we just need joy that doesn't have a connection to politics or some sort of serious issue, which everything feels like it has that now.
Yeah.
And like, how do we do that in smaller groups? Because it was such a wonderful experience. And like, I'm there, like, I'm pretty reserved usually when I go to shows. I'm like singing my heart out, and like all these people around, and because everybody was just loving it. And I had never experienced that before. And like, I'm not sure I want to experience that again. It was kind of similar to winning the presidential in 2008, a little different, but like that sort of feeling, like we just need more of that, because there's just so much negative right now.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because like I would never have guessed that or expected that. And I kind of want some psychology PhD to do some research on that particular phenomenon, because it doesn't quite make sense to me, but that sounds so beautiful.
I think it's, it's a mixture of, they were gone, and it seemed like they were gone forever, because the brothers got in a fight and they didn't talk and all this stuff. And then they both had successful solo careers. So it was sort of like, okay, like they're just kind of doing their thing. But I think for that sort of Gen X or elder millennial crowd, like they were one of the big bands in the 90s. And then a lot of people in the US never got to experience, because they were bigger in Europe than they were here. And then they broke up, and then all of a sudden, like they came kind of at the right time. Like I think people needed that. And I think there are other ways that we could recreate that, but it's special. And it's like, I even saw videos of TikTok, which I empathized with, where people were like doing these like sad memes, because they're like, I'm remembering the show from a week ago that I'm never going to get to experience again. Like that's how much people, but it's like, yes, it's about the band, but really it's about this like communal, this communal act of joyness that we just don't have.
Yep. Yeah. I was just talking to somebody at work today asked me, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing pretty good. And then I qualified it by saying, well, considering the state of the world, I'm doing pretty good. You can't actually say you're doing pretty good right now. And like, that's awful. That's just awful that we've metered our joy because of what's going on. And so you have to have those moments where you can just forget everything, even if it's just for a couple of hours. Like we need that.
We definitely do. And it's true. I do the same thing. Like, and everybody that I live in New York. So like, obviously it's like a very progressive place, but like, everybody says that. There's no like, I'm good. How are you? Good. It's like, well, and that is an awful feeling. And so like everybody deserves to have a break from that. And it's also not good for our mental health. And like, for 2 hours, I did not, for 2.5, whatever it was. I didn't think about politics. I didn't think about like, the challenges with building a business in this environment. Like it was just fun. And we just need to do that. Like that could be bowling on a Wednesday night, or that could be gathering to, like watching a football game on Sunday or something. But I think everybody, like people just need to make more of an effort to find those spaces so that they do not feel so down all the time. Cause that's really what it feels like in this country right now. Right. Is like everybody feels down.
Yeah.
For good reason. But like, it's just, you can't sustain that over time.
Yeah. If you let the situation completely steal your joy, they've won.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. And so that's what keeps me kind of looking for those moments and creating those moments of joy.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's switch into our lightning round.
Okay.
So got 12 questions.
I'm a little scared because I read these and I went, oh God.
Yeah.
How am I going to answer this?
Yeah. You have to answer quickly. They're deep questions. You have to answer quickly. So that's the challenge.
Okay.
I've actually added one. Season 1, we only had 11. Now we have 12.
Okay.
And a few of them are different. So listeners, if you've been following along in season 1, I'm mixing up some of the lightning round questions. So the first one is, what are your top 3 values?
I'm already failing because my values are respect, empathy, and kindness.
Okay. What's your favorite emotion?
Joy.
What's your least favorite? Yeah. Yeah. What's your least favorite emotion?
Sadness.
Why?
I think when I'm sad, I feel a bit hopeless. I can give you, I know this is a lightning round, but it is an example for this.
If I ask a follow-up.
Okay, I'm allowed.
Yeah,
okay.
You're allowed.
So my father got sick a little over 3 years ago, and we didn't know why. And we eventually figured it out that he had a thing called, it's a liver disease, and I'm going to forget it because I'm on air now. Primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is a incurable liver disease. A week later, he died. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. And so it was a shock. He was only 70. He had mostly recovered from the alcohol thing. And that's the saddest part, is that like he had gotten through that, which is also funny because my grandfather died of smoking at 66 and had quit a few years before. So there are these weird parallels, but like thinking about how he went, and, not being able to see his grandchildren grow up. We had also, funny enough, I had gotten him, he died in September, and in June for Father's Day, this tells you how fast it was. He was a musician, amateur musician, and he had written a song in the 60s that another band performed. And my brother and I, my brother's a bit of a musician, I'm not, we bought him studio time in New York City to re-record the song because he always said it wasn't done right. And so he went and practiced, and I showed him who the producer was, and I showed him all. He was super excited, and he didn't get to do it. And so that was a really painful experience. We did turn it into a joyful thing, in that my brother and I did it. And I sang on it, which I was scared shitless. And then we raised money, all the proceeds, downloads or streams, which streaming is not a lucrative business. We gave to this group working for treatments and cures for primary sclerosing cholangitis. So it ended up being a good thing, but those moments when all essentially hope was lost, was just awful. And I worried about my mom, and I worried about him, and I worried about my brother and myself. And it was just so like that feeling of hopelessness, and maybe hopelessness is more so than sadness. It is a hard thing, because I'm generally a positive, optimistic person. I mean, I grumble like any New Englander does, but for the most part, I see a path forward. And in that case, there was none. So that was a very, very difficult thing for me to experience.
Thank you for sharing that. One of the reasons I asked why on that was happy and sad tend to be descriptors for some deeper emotion. And so I'm glad you got to that. I'm glad you pushed me on it, because it's true. It was the hopelessness, and that's why, like, I have always tried to be mission driven and see things to fix and make better. And if I don't have that, I lose my moral compass, because then it's like, well, then what the hell's the point? Yeah. Right. Like, if you don't have that. So I'm glad. Thank you for pushing me. I appreciate that. Yeah. Hope and joy. Those are the things we can't lose. Yeah. So where can you feel the most yourself?
I know I was supposed to ask this. This was the question I was scared of. I think I feel the most like myself with my wife. I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. Like, I don't have any blinders, or I don't have any, blockers of how I act. And she may think that's a little too goofy and silly sometimes, but she is the one that brings out the most me version that there is.
Then you've chosen the right partner.
Yes, definitely.
What's the one way you try to make the world a better place for others?
Doing what I'm doing. I think that we have left men behind in the last 10 or 15 years. And I didn't realize this until I did the White Dudes last year. I've always been like, I do firmly believe the progressive policies are the best for this country. And I do believe that conservative ideology, while sometimes well-intended, is not something that helps everybody. But then getting this and realizing that this was a way that I could take my digital skills, my political skills, and being somebody that likes to fix things, like talk about a monumental challenge of like rehabilitating, hundreds of millions of men who've been sold a bill of goods that is false. So that's my, I know I'm giving you long-winded answers.
No, that's great, because the thing that jumps out at me is it is this huge ocean that we're trying to change, right? And you can't boil the entire ocean. It's really one heart at a time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. What do you want other men to see in you? This is giving me too much credit, but I want them to see a version of masculinity that they want to be as well. What makes you the most proud of yourself?
Well, you're asking the probing questions today.
Yeah. So I'll back up there, because I think that these kind of questions are uncomfortable, because they make us look inside. They make us really think about ourselves and reflect on who we are. Men don't do that enough. Right. So I want to show that there are men out there that are brave enough to do this in a way that the world is going to see. Right. And it's okay to do this. You don't have to do it on a podcast. Right. But you should do this. Right. You should know yourself. You should think about yourself and reflect on yourself. So the question was, what am I most proud of myself? Yeah. What are you most proud of? Yeah. I think I try as hard as I can to live my values, both for the world around me to see, because I am expecting people to, or I'm hoping that people will act a certain way. And I want to model that behavior. I am not perfect, and I do not do it all the time. I live in New York City, so there's a middle finger here and there when a biker cuts you off or a car honks at you. I'm human like anybody else. But also, I want to model it for my son. And I think, as we talked about, it is a challenging environment right now to raise a son with all of these challenges around us. And so all I can do is model the best behavior that I can and try to be as affectionate as I can, because that is a thing that men, even dads, are not great at. I'm fortunate that I didn't really have that problem with my family, but I know plenty of friends that had that experience. Yeah. So that, I would say, living my practicing what I preach, I guess, is basically the best way to put it. Okay. Speaking of imperfection, what's your greatest opportunity for growth or improvement that maybe you're working on right now, or that you would really like to change about yourself? And, I'm asking this question because this is one of the new questions. Okay. Because I think that there is a perception of men who are kind of left of center, that we are holier than thou, that we feel like we have all the answers, and that we're talking down. I want to show that we are imperfect humans. We are working, we're doing the work on ourselves. So what are you doing? What work are you doing on yourself, or a place where you need to do some work on yourself? Well, this is easier than the proud question, to be perfectly honest. I'm too impatient across the board. I see something needing fixing or done, and I want to go do that. And I get very frustrated when there are roadblocks. I worked in the federal government for 5 years. So after I worked in the Obama campaign, I did a year at a different job, and then I went into the administration. And I was a political appointee, which is basically the president gets to pick his cabinet, and the cabinet gets to pick a certain amount of people. And then the vast majority of federal workers are what's called career civil servants. They're the ones right now that are not working because, well, I'm not going to get political. I'll keep politics out of this. But the best thing that anyone ever told me was also part of my drawback, was that he said, my deputy, who was a career person, he was like, you came here to break things. And originally I was insulted, but then he kept going, and it was very clear that he saw me as breaking things that were already broken to fix them. But I can see where these things need to go, but especially in the government, it is a slow slog.
And so I think we did a lot of great things there, but I struggled mightily with that. And even today with the show, like if I have a vision, I'm not even sure I think it's right, but again, it's me, it's my idea. I have to convince other guys that this is the right thing to do. And, most of the time it happens and sometimes it doesn't. And in the moment, sometimes I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ, just do the damn thing. And it's like, well, but that's my perspective. That's not everybody's. And this is a partnership. And we do all get along very, very well. And, the community question from before, like meeting the white dudes first, and then I was the only one in this group that was actually a white dude for Harris organizing person, but these guys all came through it. And so I got this whole big network of friends, which is great. But there were dudes, and there's some bickering. But I'm impatient. There's no doubt about it. I know it. I try to work on it. This is a bit of a New England trait too. I stereotype all of us up there, but we hold grudges and we are patient. So I'm trying to be a little better about that.
I can only imagine what the behind the scenes conversations are between you and those guys, because there's some strong personalities in that group.
Well, what's interesting though is what we tell everybody is that we actually, one of the guys, Chris, who is the actual Nazi hunter guy, the long beard, is always like, guys, hit record, because everything you're saying, we should be saying on the show. This is military background of let's do it. But it's true. We actually it's not a performance. We are taught, and the authenticity, I also think, is what people really are gravitating towards. And we are exactly the same off as we are on. But yes, it is 5 strong personalities, no doubt about it, with very, very different backgrounds. But but we've all been very mature and professional. And when we disagree, we actually talk about it, which is like a novel concept, right? Instead of being bitter and angry. So,
I've actually, I love the points where somebody will just go, no, I completely disagree with that. And, you go into it. So,
it happened in the, I think it was in the one with Olivia Giuliana, who is a Gen Z activist, and someone was trying to explain the right, and another guy, the other Chris was like,
I listened to that one the other day.
It was a great, But we're actually trying to come up with more topics where we disagree, because we know it's good. Yeah, it's good. It's good listening. So
So where do you feel the most vulnerable?
I feel the most vulnerable in a group of people that I don't know. And I'm an extrovert, but if I am in a room where I don't know anybody, and I'm very outgoing, but I'm not generally the type of person that just walks up to someone and starts talking. This is probably why I've always done digital and social online rather than sales, where you have to, so a room full of people, especially in the political settings, is still a little bit intimidating.
I want to dig into that one, because you and I are completely kindred spirits. I will get up in front of a room of 500 people and give a speech. Barely, my heart rate will barely rise. You put me in a room of people I don't know, and I have to go introduce myself to them. It's like panic. And so what is it that sort of induces that anxiety in you, or that uncomfortableness?
I think it's still, maybe this sounds insane, but I still think there's a bit of imposter syndrome going on. And I'll tell you what the last example was I went to an event in DC where I haven't lived in 10 years. And it was a progressive digital and messaging conference, basically to find out how to solve this mess that we somewhat created for ourselves. And there were a lot of big people there. There were, Senator Chris Van Hollen was there. Graham Plattner was there, who's unfortunately been in the news for not good reasons, but going back before this, was kind of a rock star. And I'm sitting here, I'm a guest, and I knew a few people, but I was kind of who am I to go up to talk to some of these people? And I know that's silly, but that's what's going on in my head. And the only thing I did do that went against that mold is that when Graham, because I'm from Maine too, finished his speech, which was very, very good, I bum rushed the stage and kind of elbowed 2 people to be the first one and did the whole I'm from Maine thing. And so that was after that, I actually left. I had to catch a train, but I could have stayed probably 10, 15 more minutes and talked to people. But I was just I don't know anyone here. I'm just calling.
Yeah.
And that, but like, I'm same with you. Like I introduced Joe Biden at an event, sort of by accident because he screwed something up and just walked up on stage, and I had to like jump up to the microphone and introduce him for something. I've advised cabinet secretaries. Yeah. I've been in the Roosevelt room in the White House for meetings, and like that one was a little intimidating, but like, and I played basketball at the White House, like all these things I'm like fine with as long as I know somebody, but it's daunting to me when I don't.
Yeah. It's that quick scan of the room of who do I know? Right.
Yep.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Yep.
Yep. And if I know somebody, I'm fine. But if I don't, it's a struggle unless someone comes up to me, which luckily did happen a few times. So I wasn't just the guy. And like the phone is a defense mechanism. It's almost like a shield sometimes because then I'm just like, oh, I'm doing work on my phone instead of just pretending like I'm not standing here like an idiot by myself.
Yeah, exactly. So this next question is one that I kind of love seeing white guys squirm when I ask it. Because I think it's a difficult question for white guys to answer because they're worried about getting filleted for their answer. But I'm going to ask it anyway.
I'm ready.
What's the hardest thing about being you in today's world?
Oh boy, that is a hard one. And I'm not squirming because I'm afraid. I am generally very privileged and very fortunate. And that's partly why I fight for the things that I fight for, because I know I've had advantages in my life that a lot of people have not. I had 2 loving parents that, took me places and showed me new things. I had great groups of friends. I got fortunate to go to a college that I wanted to go to. And I've gotten to do these amazing jobs. The hardest thing, I think it's almost a fear rather than the hardest thing about me is letting people down. That's the thing that I think is the hardest. And, it sounds silly and I feel weird talking about it, but like I've gotten to do some really big things, some really cool things. But the downside of that is like, well, you've done these big things. You still got 25 years left of your career. Like, how do you keep
what's next? Yeah.
What's next? Right. And so I was actually quite lost after I left WeWork right before the bankruptcy, and I did start a digital marketing firm, which I had a lot of fun doing, but it wasn't me. And like I was doing it because I was like I worked at WeWork, and then I did politics, so I had both business and political stuff. But like I was like, I'm just making money for other people. Like, and I was pretty, and I was like, I was the chief digital officer for the state of New York. Like, I've been to the White House 30, 40 times, and I'm like sitting in a, co-working space trying to get small, medium businesses to take my pitch. And, I was like, is this it? And then I got very fortunate. White dudes came along, kind of fell in my lap. And then I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I think it's the letting down, or letting myself down maybe, is better than like letting other people down. Though I worry about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough question because like, regardless of how much privilege we have, there are still things that are hard about living in this world. Right. And we have to be,
life is hard no matter who, right?
Life is really hard. Yeah.
Well, and this is part of the challenge I think we have with young men, because, when we tell, especially young white men, that you have had advantages all of your life that other people haven't had. And so we are working to make it fair for everybody. That's the right thing to do. But for those guys, that feels like a step backwards, right? Because a 22-year-old did not enjoy all of the, benefits of being a white man. Like, they didn't get that. So like, they're hearing this thing, and it is true in the macro, but a lot of times in the micro, it's not. And so it is a real challenge.
And they don't understand that like the society was built for them.
100%.
100%. And when you start peeling away those obstacles that others have had, it creates an even playing field. And like Richard Reeves' book on like, whenever he talks about how in elementary and high school, where they've essentially removed all obstacles that girls have had towards getting an education. Girls are just kicking the boys' butts academically, kicking their asses. And it's because they've taken away the things that were built in there that were favoring boys. Right. And it's, I don't want to leave boys behind, but we need to have some way of making sure that they're getting support as well, because it's not a good thing that they're falling behind.
No, it's very dangerous, right? Yeah. And that's I think that on the left we have failed in our messaging to explain, like, we aren't taking things away, we are evening the playing. Even DEI. So like, I actually advised the University of Michigan last year for a while before they ended their DEI programs due to pressure for Trump, which is a story for another podcast. But, you know, I learned a lot about DEI, what it actually means, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And a lot of people have said this is it's affirmative action, and it's not. Yeah. And, you know, I think we've done a bad job on our side. DEI is for everybody, including white guys. Like, it is meant, if you are in a disadvantaged place, like in Michigan, for example, the Upper Peninsula is a poor rural part of the state. And the DEI programs up there are designed for them, but we have not explained that. We try to tell this full tale that is missing people. And I think that is partly why we are doing Find Out as well, because I want to get messages out that aren't getting out, because we need to make sure that boys are supported, no matter whether they're white, black, brown, gay, trans, anything. And same with girls, like everybody, we need it for everybody. But we have not done a good job. And I think the other side, to be perfectly honest, has weaponized it, and in a fearful way. This is why you hear these trans sports arguments, which there's like a dozen high school kids and like 100 in college or something. It's like not an issue. But like, it was the most effective ad against Kamala Harris in 2024. And so, you know, I think that there is just a lot of work that we have to do to explain to people that society is changing, but it is changing for the better. But we have to make sure we're not leaving everybody behind, or anybody behind.
I'm really glad you brought up that issue about DEI, because, you know, I work for a university, and like one of the audiences that we are trying to attract more and support more is from what's called low sending counties. And low sending counties are all rural white counties, right? We're trying to get more kids to come to the university from that. We have programs to attract veterans, right? Like, which are, you know, that is DEI. That's DEI. Yeah. Right. So like, we just need to like continue to talk about that. I don't know that label will ever resurface as something that's viable in the world.
Sadly not.
But the work continues.
100%. 100%. Even if they change the names, the things are still going to happen. And I just wish more people understood. So I'm glad that we have mentioned it. So if people are hearing for the first time, it's great that they're hearing that.
Okay. 2 more questions. Great. What's the one thing that surprised you about today's conversation? Either something I asked or the way that you answered, like that, something that surprised you about your own answer.
I mean, some of those questions that you asked about introspection, like I will say I'm probably not so good at that. I don't think a lot of men are good at that, right? Like, and we're also told in society to not be boastful and to, like, you know, be, you know, kind of impish when someone's like giving you praise or something. And so, like, thinking about what you've done or what I've done or not done, you know, I'm happy with the way that I answered it. I did not, like, I was a little nervous coming in because you gave me the pre-read and I read it and I was like, I don't know. So I think that the answer on the sadness answer, I think, which is really turned into hopelessness, I think is the one that is correct. But I think I was a little surprised at how I meandered there in this. Yeah.
There's a strategy in providing the questions ahead of time because they are deep. It keeps me from having to edit all the thought words out, because if they haven't thought about it, if a guest hasn't thought about it, they will have 20 seconds of ums and uhs while they think about it, and it makes it's fairer to you, and it's also easier on me on the editing side. So
for sure. And I have a problem with the ums anyway, so I apologize to anybody if I've been doing it a lot. But I
generally don't edit out the kind of the normal conversational filler words, but like if there's a lot of thought time, I will cut those out. So one last question. And it's maybe the most important question of the day. What advice do you have for men who are struggling to find their place in a rapidly changing society?
Try to find your place. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. There are people just like you, no matter where you are. Everybody is unique, but everybody has mutual interest with somebody else. Doing that on the internet is fine and a good start, but like trying to meet people in real life, I think is really, really important, and is something we have lost in this post-COVID world. I think that men, as somebody who's trying to be more open and live these values that we keep talking about on the shows and stuff, like, I think, men, you will be surprised at the responses you get if you reach out, authentically. Yeah. And I think it will be much more well received than you think. We are not 12 anymore. And, a lot of us who grew up in the 90s know that like showing empathy was considered weak. And it's not like that anymore. And I think, and if somebody reacts negatively to you, my answer to that would be, and I'm taking this from my youngest co-host, but I would tell that person to get fucked. Pretty much, that's his phrase. That like if that's not a person you want to be talking to, so just putting yourself out there, I think, reaps more rewards than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for quoting Luke. He weaves a tapestry of F-bombs like nobody has ever done before,
which is really funny. He is a calm, cool, and collected person offline. He believes those things 100%, but he is so incredibly intelligent, and he is one of the reasons I actually have hope for this country, because he is a 22-year-old white male from the Midwest. Yep. And he is empathetic, kind, smart, and also has weirdly found a trick to actually get some of these kids to wake up, because I was always told that shaming people was the worst thing you could possibly do. And I think it's probably true in most cases. But for that 18 to 25 set, I can't tell you how many DMs he's gotten from people who originally came to troll him. And he basically said, stop being a fucking idiot. And like weeks later, they come back and go, I just want to thank you for waking me up, which is interesting. And we're going to pull on that thread a little bit with him. I don't think that works for people our age.
Because at that age, they're impressionable. They're not entrenched. Yes. They're not entrenched. Right.
And they're terrified of being stupid or or misinformed. Like that peer pressure can work
they just
in the right way.
They just want to belong.
Right. It's really that simple. Yeah. And I don't think that people fully understand how many people voted for Donald Trump because of the media ecosystem that has been created that basically welcomed these people with open arms. We start doing that, like what we are trying to do with Find Out, we could switch a whole bunch of them. This is not a thing that is over. And I think that this is one calculated mistake I think that side has made, is that they think they've won forever. And I don't think they understand how much they are potentially going to lose next year, because those same people are going to look and say, you sold us a bill of goods. These podcasters sold us a bill of goods. The bills come due and we have seen nothing. So I for folks listening, that's part of my hopeful message, is I do think that this is where all hope is not lost.
Yep. This country swings back and forth. It just does. The
pendulum back and forth. Like, as someone in the political world, it is so frustrating to deal with, but it's true. And, it happens. And, this case is a little bit different, but like, we'll get through it. We'll get through it.
We will. All right. Well, thank you, Tim. Really appreciate this conversation. So glad we finally got to connect. And I'll leave you with what I leave all my guests with: just keep up the hard work.
Thank you. And same to you. Thank you for doing, this is such an important thing that you're doing. And I hope this gets in front of people, because it is such an important conversation and a thing that I think will help men a lot. So thank you for doing this.
Okay. Thanks so much. You can learn more about Illuminate at illuminate.substack.com. We're also streaming on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you at the next episode of Illuminate.